we're talking.
It's a good show.
I just want you guys to know this is Limor's first time actually on a podcast, right?
Oh no, I've been on The Sellers twice.
Okay, so
and
this is just the same
on a
thing.
photography one.
So she's very
On
enamored
yours.
by you.
Not by you.
She knows
Like her.
Pat, but she's
Oh.
never met you before. She's met Pat.
I was like, oh, Pat, that's okay. You know,
Nobody
it's like
does
she's
it
like this
by me.
activist.
She's
and
like
I'm photographer.
she's gonna learn from you. We all learn.
Yeah.
Oh well, I'm always
been
happy
only
to be
seeing-
on the pod, chopping it up, and also see Pat. It's been a minute. It was really good to see you. Yeah,
Really?
yeah.
Is it really
All I
like-
just see her is on Instagram, just living her best fucking life. And then, like,
Awesome.
you know what I'm saying? Just literally in a
Oh.
constant jump shot position.
I need to put some just regular ass pictures up there.
No, I'm just teasing.
No. Honestly, and not because you said anything, because comments been coming up to me.
Well, I don't know. I think it looks.
I don't want it to be like.
No, you do want it to be like, if they hating, that's a good thing.
No, I don't want it to be like that. I don't show my full self. That's all I'm saying. I mean, yeah. You know, I'm training for a race and stuff like that. I've got other things going on in my life, so.
Sure. When's the race anyway?
It's in April
Oh.
14th.
So we
in
have
Hawaii.
started.
Oh,
This
what's
is
up? Oh, that's
Yeah,
dope.
yeah,
That's gonna be
yeah,
fun.
yeah.
Good conversation, guys.
I gotta get
Started
tickets
much.
now.
No,
Yeah, I got a thing for Hawaii.
We started.
Like,
We started,
never
but I don't
been,
want
that's
you to
why I
feel
wanna
like
yeah,
go.
so I want to go because I'm like
Yeah.
I would feel as well.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the show.
Sorry.
I didn't want to do it like that, but I'm glad you guys are bonding because I want this relationship to work. So today we have Pat Brown, Limor Garfinkle. I said it right, and Agunda Okeyo. Welcome back.
Yes.
Welcome back. And this is your first time on Friends Like Us.
First, I'm so honored.
Well, it's just good to have you here. And we also talking about, we could start off with Pat being on Two Dope Queens for HBO, which is really
Mhm.
exciting.
It is.
And we were actually talking about how people are responding to your new success. And the fact that you were in the front row at the Madison Square
At the
Garden.
Knicks game, front row. Yeah,
That's
that
what's
was just a big deal for me being a basketball lover, and I played basketball in college, and I love basketball. Those people who know me know, and so just being there, and it was just so cool because Tracy was like, Pat, go to the garden with me. What you doing tomorrow? I'm like, shit, I'm going to the garden. That's what. I don't know what plans I have, but I know tomorrow I'm going to the garden. So it was just so surreal to be there. But it was really fun. It was really cool.
And that is just so cool that Tracy, who you work with, you open for, you feature for, like includes you and stuff like that. It makes you feel like you're part of the family.
Yeah, and this is so interesting because he kept saying, and I was like, how that dynamic's gonna play out because I'm a woman and I'm with him, but to the community of comics, they know us, and they know it's not a big deal. But Tracy always says, "You my sister," and then so because we have conversations, and I believe he really feels that way. So when we were at the game, he just kept saying, "Yo, this is my sister," and they would say, "Oh yeah, I see it." And I was like,
You just went with it.
I was like, okay.
That's so funny. That's hilarious.
Yeah. But he was introducing me out, and I got Paul George, who you probably don't know if you're not basketball fans, but he's plays for the Thunder, and he's he's being touted as one of the MVPs of this season. But anyway, they give their shoes away every game. And so Tracy my sister wants your shoes. So
Did you get?
Yes, he gave me
Oh,
shoes.
Oh
What's up?
man, that is huge.
Yeah, it was.
Do they treat you different in the front row like that? Like, is there rules or?
But there's actually security for the front row. Like, ain't nobody leaning over to try to touch you, to talk to you, take pictures with you. None of that. They are there, and every person on the front row that is accomplished in the way that I guess they can present it. So Rail was sitting next to me and Tracy. So first they did a clip from Tracy's The OG, and then showed him, and then they did something from Rail. What was the last movie he was in? Bird Box. and they showed a clip from that and showed rail, and then there was
At the game?
Yeah, at the game.
Wow.
Yeah, just a little, a sliver of a kid. So they did that all the way down for all the people that were.
Oh, wow.
stood out.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah, and they showed my little two dope queen.
That's dope.
No, they did not.
Do you get different? Is there food that is it catered down there? Is it like a?
I didn't see anybody eat. I think that's the stars don't eat in front of people or something.
They don't. They don't get
No.
popcorn or hot dogs.
No, I didn't see anyone eat. We had
No peanuts.
we had $8 waters. And it was so funny too, because Tracy ordered a water, and I put up my hands like to the lady, said 2, and so she said like $15 or something like that. And
She's like, you only get one water.
And he said for a water, and then she said 2, and he looked at me like, oh, okay.
We're
okay.
gonna share. We're gonna share. We're sharing this water.
Yeah. Well, that is impressive. That,
Mhm.
I was really happy for you. I missed you that day, but that
Mhm.
was cool. That was really cool. to see.
When I tell you I love you, but I didn't miss you one.
I know you didn't. Vaughn was like, can I fill in for Pat there too?
No, you cannot.
So that's exciting. And then Agunda Okeyo, you were at the Women's March recently, which I wanted to ask you a few things about,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
The most recent,
Yeah.
yes, this is the most controversial, and the numbers were low. And just so you know, when I ask in the audience
Mhm.
how many women went to the Women's March,
Mhm.
it's like not like it'll be a room of like 300 people and like 2 women will put up their hands.
Well, so what's the question about?
Why are the numbers so low? And what's the controversy?
Well, for one, I can tell you from my perspective with respect to the New York City chapter, because that's who I've been working with, there isn't really any controversy on our end. But what has been happening is that there have been some deep conversation going on around inclusivity in the Women's March, right? So people have been accusing Women's March, whether it's around issues of inclusion of Jewish people or inclusion of the LGBTQI plus community. But with New York City, what was kind of difficult was that, like, for one, I'm queer, so I'm one of the leaders of the New York chapter, right? So, like, we had worked with New York City Pride for the last rally that we did. We had a lot of queer folks in the community who were actually present. And then we also had a Jewish contingent for New York, because New York has the largest Jewish population outside of the state of Israel. So it just doesn't make any sense to not have significant representation of the Jewish community. But the narrative was so salacious, and I think it served a certain idea of women not being able to organize and get together and get along.
Yeah.
So, like, the media kind of peddled it like hard body.
Well, wasn't it with the Louis Farrakhan? What was that?
Well, there's a controversy that happens, that people have been talking about with the national organization, right? Whether or not, because one of the leaders had been at an event outside of her role with Women's March where Farrakhan is speaking. And that created a lot of concerns with people. And that was like in March. There was a statement of saying that, we do not support anti-Semitism, we do not stand with the Nation, we don't work with the Nation of Islam. Those statements put out about that. But still, I know people were concerned, and it was brought up again this fall.
And then it seemed to define the whole divisiveness.
Yeah, I mean, I like it from the New York City local chapter perspective. Like, we didn't really have a lot of those tensions, but they were projected onto us.
I see.
And a lot of local chapters around the country had the same problem, where like things were projected onto you that weren't necessarily the reality of what you were doing. And then furthermore, if we really want to have a conversation about inclusivity, we should do that. If we want to have hard conversations about what communities are represented or not represented, we should do that. But Women's March actually has been doing consistent work around either correcting behavior publicly, putting out statements about that, or redressing what we have, which are called the unity principles, which are like several principles which are like super progressive. Anyone would love them, around like inclusion of all communities, or it's disabled people, or LGBTQI plus, or religious minorities, or whatever, people of color. So the unity principles are pretty comprehensive. At the time, I think they didn't include certain specific isms. Mm-hmm. So people were concerned about that, but then that was also addressed. So it's kind of like, the way I interpret it is that movements are fragile, and they test the boundaries of the status quo. Women's March has been, I would say, unusually successful over the course of the last 3 years. And I think that success speaks to the backlash. That's how I interpret it.
I see.
So it's kind of like, I think that going forward, women need to understand that we've never had a properly intersectional, multiracial movement in the history of the United States. Like, it hasn't actually occurred. And Women's March is an attempt to do that.
And it's scary for the status quo.
Yeah, it's very disruptive. I mean, it changes a lot of issues around excuses we make for why we don't change certain systemic problems. You know what I mean? When you're sitting next to the person that's of the demographic that supposedly you want to help, and you're like looking at their face, how can you not necessarily take up that moral courage to actually change the issue? You know what I mean? Like, if you're talking to somebody who's a woman of color sitting next to you and saying, I want to help women of color, and she's sitting right next to you, why aren't you having a conversation with her about how to move things forward?
Went to a event on Saturday that I was not sure I wanted to go to because it's the day I perform. Usually during the day, like Pat is like me. If I'm performing that night, I don't do nothing. They don't ask me to do nothing.
Right.
But I did go to Jeannie Gaffigan's event. It's Imagine Society, where she takes kids from different schools and they come together and they talk about change. And they break up into little groups. And they have a board, they talk about change, but it's diverse. So like you were saying, like the group that I was like kind of mentoring was like 2 Black girls, and then Jeannie's daughter was, talking about how do we deal with police brutality and dealing with minorities. Like, and then she had suggested, maybe taking breakfast to cops, which was fun to see because the sisters, the 2 young Black girls were like, I ain't giving no cops no egg sandwich. I mean, so you have the conversation happens immediately instead of like forgetting about like if they weren't there, that wouldn't have been brought up, and it was so fun.
Cops would have had some egg sandwiches.
Right.
Well, they
would for you Black chicks.
Because the thing is that then now they're having this conversation, and then these girls, the young Black girls, are saying you can't change them, which is well, let's dig a little deeper, can we?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting to me as an activist, as a thinker, for people to somehow think that we will resolve several hundred years of systemic structural racial inequality in the course of 3 years. Like, there'll be tensions, there'll be difficult conversations. Like,
we're gonna do it.
Yeah, we're gonna have to do this. And
is that bacon on it?
You know what I'm saying?
Hey, got that cheese.
You know what I'm saying?
You get there fast.
Cheddar, switch it up. No,
Cops are vegan.
Yeah.
I'm plant-based, ma'am.
Revolution will be stopped.
Get out of here before I shoot you.
You know what I'm saying? No, but seriously, it's something where like I think what I learned a lot about in the process of working very closely with Women's March for the past like year and a half is that like we are our own greatest obstacle to our liberation fundamentally. Like, if people can, on an individual level, whoever you are, regardless of your socioeconomic background or whatever, actually take stock of yourself and what are you actually doing in your own life to make the world to be what you want it to be. If you're out there on social media saying you're about certain things, if you're out there in public telling people you believe in this, if you're buying fair trade coffee because you think that's doing something, right? We need to make sure that people are actually like taking stock of their own moral character and trying to live that, because you will be tested.
Well, it's interesting because I want to bring Limor into this conversation because she had a great thing that she spoke to me about yesterday, which was she has to take care of herself. So do you want to finish that?
Well, I just want to say that since after the election, I canceled cable. The day after Trump won, I canceled cable and I said, I just can't. I can't. It's too much. It's too much of the wrong stuff. It's just, I just needed a break from all of it. And I've decided to just not listen to all the noise. It's just noise, a lot of it. And just kind of focus on what's really important to me and live my life in a way that where I can make the difference with my own projects, with people around me, with my own community, and just channel my energy to that. I'm someone who suffers from anxiety, so for me, I used to be a news junkie until the whole election thing, and then I couldn't. It literally made me ill.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, for me, it's just basically learn what to listen to, because there's a lot of junk out there, and it's just, you can't believe everything. You can't take it all in. Know who the people that are in your life. Know what's the difference that's got to be made for those people that are in your life, and kind of help make that happen. And for me, it's living in New York, it's just there's just so
It's
many.
overwhelming.
Yeah.
And then,
So-
and like you were saying, to the media, projecting onto what was happening here, the media was putting out fake news.
Yeah, it was interesting, and what was also interesting was that they were people who believed it and then would propagate it further. So it was actually kind of, I'd written a while ago. I don't know if you know this. I wrote an article a while ago after the election in 2016, and I wrote a piece. I think it was published early last year, talking about Cambridge Analytica's parent company, the data mining company that used micro-targeting to potentially flip this election and also help Brexit and stuff. That they had been involved in the last 2 Kenyan presidential elections. And I'm originally from Kenya.
Oh,
And I had observed elements of the last election that looked like this election in 2016. And I remember telling people that, and they're like, "What do you mean? Those are, Africa, we're America, or whatever."
Right.
And then I was like, and I was like, it's too familiar. And then I kind of kept digging, and then it came out. It was a big story in Kenya. It was a big story internationally. But I wrote about it, about data mining, because I find data mining interesting. I find the ways that we can be influenced by misinformation or disinformation in this moment, I find it interesting. Because it is being weaponized, and it is being effective. And not to say that it's always the case when you read something you don't like or read something that upsets you about someone. I'm not saying that. And we need to hold the powerful accountable, including movement leaders, absolutely. But at the same time, like, I'm skeptical in general when I see uncritical and kind of opinions about something, about somebody, when you don't actually know all of the facts. Like every day, like, so remember this story? Remember a while ago? Like, this is like a simple example of just not doing our homework. Remember a while ago there was this Instagram thing with this kid who was bullied and he was crying and he's sitting in the passenger seat of his mom's car.
Yes.
And he's a blonde little white boy,
Yes.
right? And I remember everyone came out like on a Friday over the weekend. Everyone's getting so upset. Justin Bieber does something, Rihanna does something, like Kardashian does. Everyone's just like trying to take care of this kid. Lo and behold, there's a GoFundMe, of course. Find out within like 3 or 4 days, this kid was not bullied. It was totally created by his parents and.
Or like the homeless guy, right? There's a thing where they posted a guy was homeless and they did a GoFundMe and then they found out it was not.
Yeah, or the thing the couple stole the money, right? The one that the couple who they raised all this money for this homeless guy and then they pocketed all the money.
Yeah, that was one of those stories. I was like, I don't even want to.
Yeah, and the reason why I bring that up is not to say we shouldn't express love if you feel compassion. If you feel emotionally triggered by something and you want to express compassion, I think that's great. But I remember in that moment, I just looked at that image for some reason as someone who's very empathetic to children, and I don't want to minimize the bullying culture.
Right.
Right? But like I looked at that shit and I was like,
Something's not right.
Someone's not right.
Call bullshit.
You know what I'm saying?
Now, would you compare this to what happened with the Native American and the young kid in
the march in DC?
In DC,
Mm-hmm.
like that. Remember
That was different because
how? Because that was from some people's perspective. They felt like we had jumped on the bandwagon of making this kid out to be this like.
there's a weird. I mean, it's complex. Okay, like one thing I could say on the one hand is that we do live in a patriarchal society. So isn't it interesting that a narrative that women couldn't get along ended up dominating the conversation when the march was happening for the 3rd annual Women's March, after we had the largest number of women in Congress in the history of the United States, women running for office all over the place. Time's Up, Me Too. Women are gaining power, like authentic power. And then in that moment, we're going to go ahead and like minimize them. And then then you kind of, when you think about that, that's patriarchy working, and also racism when you think about some of the ways that some of the women of color are being talked about in the Women's March, in my opinion. I think there's racism there. But then you have this incident in DC, where that was interesting because wasn't it interesting that this young man, we saw a portion of an hour-long something video, which involved multiple weird characters, including Israelites who came there and started it off, and then like a Native American group showing up for a rally they had scheduled, and then these kids were there watching this kind of thing, almost anthropologically, right? Yeah. And then when
they were there for their protest for
abortion.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, women.
Yeah. Pro-choice, yeah. Mm-hmm. So, but these are all people who are kind of in this weird nexus of a space because they just had multiple overlapping things. But this is what I find interesting. So the video shows one portion of it, and it doesn't make that young man look very good, and it makes the Native American guy look pretty victorious, and I don't know, like his ability to kind of stay focused in the midst of being kind of surrounded by all these kids saying not so great things. So, but then what happened was I saw this interesting thing, because the kid ends up on Good Morning America, right? Native American guy can't find him anywhere, even though everyone's talking. The articles, the major publications are talking about he has a criminal record.
Yeah, no, he's not really a vet.
Yeah, he's not really a vet. He has a criminal record. I'm like, okay. And then this kid gets on Good Morning America. Then I saw a piece in the Atlantic that made me want to like retch, which was like basically that isn't it terrible that if you look at the whole video that's an hour and something long, there are all kinds of people acting badly, and we totally mischaracterize those young boys, even though some of them did tomahawk signals and like were saying things about like sexual assault being okay. We did not look at the big picture for those young white men. We should have been looking at the great context of the situation before we pushed them into the public and started demonizing
their
them.
kids.
Yes. And it's something we're like, yes, we should definitely take a beat and think about what we're writing and what we're saying in the right context. But we never do that when it comes to people of color. We never do that when it comes to women. It just doesn't happen. So like when I'm looking at this young white man who, yeah, it's fine for us to look at things in context, but they're also doing things that weren't great either. They weren't angels and they weren't demons, right? But at the same time, why is it that people are giving airtime to this kid on Good Morning America?
Because he had a PR company behind him too.
Yeah.
That they don't tell you about that. The PR company, the PR firm was behind his statement. Mm-hmm. They had to wait to. That's why his statement.
I didn't know that.
That's why his statement didn't come out until like 2 or 3 days later, because the PR firm was devising his statement, and so they got their narrative together for their appearance on Good Morning America.
Yeah.
And also, it was like one of the I don't know who did it was a CNN. Was it Tapper? I think it was Jake Tapper. Mm-hmm. He's also affiliated with that PR firm, and he didn't disclose that when he was having a interview with the boy. So it's like these things, all these things work into place to kind of confirm. Oh, let's just wait a beat for us to condemn these young white males' actions. Right, but not the Native Americans, not the black Israelites. Yeah. We just immediately jumped to judgment for both of them.
Now Limor is here, who is, once a month we have someone who's not of color, but she is, to me, you are of color. Actually.
She's of color.
Because you are. We've talked about this before.
I don't know. I don't want anybody to be like, no, you're not. But I mean,
yes.
my parents are North African.
Right. So you are. Yes.
So,
yeah. There you
surprise.
Go. Which country?
You're Egyptian.
So my father is Moroccan and my mother is Tunisian.
Oh, okay.
And they immigrated to Israel after World War II.
Oh, okay.
Like most Jewish people. Yeah.
Okay.
When we created the state, and so and then before that they were Spanish, so we're Spanish Jews.
Okay.
So, I mean...
But you have a son, so getting to this point of, like, when you saw it, how did it affect you? Like, was there anything did you see it?
No.
Okay, because you're not watching anything. But because Sonny Liston brought this up on The View, where were the adults with the kids?
Yeah.
That's such a good point. It's like, with everything involved, where were the adults to tell these kids... Well, and then why were they wearing MAGA hats when it's a religious institution? It's not supposed to be political, right?
Yeah, but the school that they're from has a history of racial,
which I was not surprised.
That's right.
I mean,
just blackface and just calling out like when opposing teams have black players and racial slurs toward the players. And parents there condoning that manner of behavior in a Catholic school with, opposing, competitors. And so that's the kind of school you're from. So when you are on a school trip wearing a Magna hat, all that's okay from a school that you're coming from that is like that supports that.
Mm-hmm. So like if you were to find out your son, like, where does he go?
My son goes to a Jewish school.
He goes to a Jewish school. So does he go on field trips or anything like that, or?
Yeah, they do.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Does he wear the MAGA hat? Is it Magna or MAGA? I'm just
MAGA.
kidding. MAGA. Has he
Um,
worn a MAGA hat?
I don't want to sound completely dumb, but I don't even know what that is. I'm sorry. I mean, I heard
Yeah.
about it.
Mhm. It's a Make America Great Again hat.
Oh,
the red hat.
gosh.
Look at that, instant.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
absolutely not.
the MAGA hat is an interesting symbol. You know what I mean? Like, it's come to mean something far more nefarious than I think we thought initially. You know what I mean? Because there's been so many instances of people rocking that hat, spewing hate, and acting in ways that were just so negative that, like, I have a hard time associating that hat with anything but a negative
That's the
energy.
thing. It's like, why would you, as a chaperone,
Yeah.
right? Let's say your son went on a field trip and you found out that there were other kids wearing that hat on the field trip. It's like, why would you, as a chaperone, even allow that to be part of the demonstration?
Mm-hmm.
You know, and it's a Catholic school. It's like,
I mean, I don't, you know, it's interesting.
I don't think it would be problematic.
Mm.
I don't, honestly, because you think about it, would we, and of course it's totally different because Trump is a verified racist. They should have him checked by his, all his social media. Verified
right.
racist.
Yeah.
So now his hat has come to mean to those people that are not white that he is a racist and that what that hat means. But those people that are in the cloud that believe that they're just following Trump because he's Trump and they're following him, maybe to those small select people a hat is just a hat, like you wearing an Obama hat. I have a Obama
But they
t-shirt.
learned that's different.
No, but I'm saying some people could be wearing a hat in terms of that. I don't believe that
Well, how can
they're that
kids-
innocent. I don't believe there's 3 people in the world in America that's that innocent about it. But I definitely think that is an argument to make.
But the thing is, with kids, you gotta also explain to them when you take them on a field trip. Listen, this is what we believe, but you're gonna have reactions. Like that
And you
should
get
have
your
been.
ass whooped with that hat on.
That
so
should have been part of the
going to DC
conversation.
with
Yeah.
that hat on, you can get your ass
Well,
whooped.
I mean, yeah, real
That
talk.
Real
hat,
talk.
I feel.
Don't let your president get your
I-
ass whooped.
I didn't even
Exactly.
know what those initials meant. I'm sorry. I mean, I read about it with that
You don't have to
story.
apologize.
But
It's good that if you don't know, this
Yeah.
is a place where it's okay to not know things.
I kind of try
Yeah.
not to know a lot of things these days because it's just like I said, it's too much. It's
Watch
like
when
personally.
Marina reads. It's okay to not know things.
Oh, speaking of.
But, I was gonna say something and I forgot. But
I apologize.
I had a thread of thought.
Oh, was it the MAGA hats?
Yeah.
It's
Forgot
it'll
what
come
it
back.
was.
I do want to get to you
Yeah.
though, Limor,
Mhm.
on what you do know
Yeah.
and what you're really good at. As soon as I can. Jesus. Sorry, I didn't want to do it.
You went to 65, just
I
that quick.
didn't want to do it, but so Limor does photography.
That's the only
Sorry.
subject I know. Everything else empty.
No, and she did a great picture of those of you who may have wondered about when I advertised single black female, that picture of me on the beach, that is Limor Garfinkle's work, everyone. Applaud her.
Yeah,
She
it was so
is-
much fun to do.
She is a commercial photographer in New York City who has worked with some of the biggest names in comedy today, like Tracy Morgan, Jim Gaffigan, Louis Black, and me, Marina Franklin. Hello. Originally from Israel, like she said, she came to New York after her military service. She started her career in advertising, but after she was laid off during the recession, she decided to make a career change and become a photographer. Limor started shooting environmental portraits of comedians at the end of 2015, and in November of 2017, Caroline's Comedy Club and TBS hosted and sponsored her first gallery fundraising event as part of the NYCF lineup, the New York Comedy Festival lineup, which auctioned those portraits to benefit the Mount Sinai Division of ADHD, learning disabilities and related disorders. There are many more comedians coming up next, but I want to ask you, what made you attach yourself to Mount Sinai's Division of ADHD?
In general, I really care about anything that has to do with mental health. I feel like there's a lot of stigma out there, and people don't really talk about it. I mean, growing up, I didn't know anybody, supposedly, who had anxiety issues or depression. Nobody spoke about this. And
No,
now,
those are the alcoholics.
no, but now I feel like
that's how we dealt with it back then. It's like
I just feel like it's I don't want it to be a secret. I want people to talk about it. It's okay. I openly talk about my anxiety issues. I mean, just being here makes me extremely anxious, and probably later I'm going to be like thinking about what did I say? Did I say anything wrong? Did I
Which
sound
is completely human.
but when you have anxiety, it's like on another level. And so ADHD is something that I've seen so many people I know in my life, like especially in my family. It runs in my family. Everybody in my family had it. My mom, my brothers, everybody, and all my friends. And I just see how it can be really devastating for people. And actually at the event I said, you probably wonder, why did I choose that cause and not something else? It's just, people don't realize it's like a hit, it's like it's very devastating for people's lives. It can stop you from reaching your full potential. It can
Are
make
you a sufferer? Do you have ADHD?
I don't think that it's funny because everybody in my family has it, but I always claim that I have the opposite. Like I focus too much on things to a point where you'll talk to me and I won't even know you're there. But I've been told that that's actually one of the symptoms of ADHD. So, and not ADHD, ADD.
Yeah, I'm ADD.
So yeah, because I'm not hyper, but so I always claim that I don't have it because I do have ability to focus for hours on things. But I mean, I'm not a
I would say
professional.
in your driving with you. I've been in the car with you, Limor.
You've been in the car with
And there was a lot of things going on where I was like, please get back on that road.
You're just a scaredy cat.
I've always felt like I've had it. I mean, it was interesting that you chose comics for that too, because comics
Right.
are so, I mean, like we're living for the jokes and the punchlines,
Right.
and I often felt like just the career itself lends itself to becoming more like ADD or ADHD.
So that was kind of a coincidence why I chose comedians, because I mean I've been friends with comedians since literally my first days in New York, and they've always been my favorite people in the world. Like there's nothing you can say to a comedian where you feel judged over. It's just everything it's just talk, just say what you feel, and so always been my favorite people, and my favorite by far people to photograph.
Why? What do you do
Because
differently?
you guys take directions so well, better than actors, I have to say. You don't take yourselves too seriously, which is the best thing, because you're open. You tell a guy to go into I want to shoot you in a bubble bath. Okay, I'm going in a bath. No big deal. No big deal. So it's sort of like
bathing suit on the beach.
bathing
What
suit
beach
on
were
the
you
beach.
guys at?
Well, of course, I had worked out for that.
Well,
you
you look
snorkel.
What beach were
fantastic.
you at?
Reese Park Beach in Long Island, right?
I
I think that's what it's called, Reese Park
Yeah.
Beach. Yeah, it was so beautiful.
It was beautiful that
Yeah.
day. And Limor, you're really good at just capturing everything. Like, you also take pictures of not just comics, you take pictures of spaces.
Yeah, that's like I always say to my friends, that's what pays the mortgage. I shoot commercial spaces. I work for a company that builds all these huge spaces. So places like Spotify, Warner Music Group, some ad agencies, like Vox, which is a communications company. All these companies, my company builds, and then I shoot them. So I love doing that, and that's my bread and butter. And then the comedians is sort of what feeds my soul. And I have a team of women, mostly women, who work with me. And for the first round of the Comedians Photo Series, they've all 100% volunteered. None of them got paid. I put out my own money for all the expenses, but none of them actually got salaries. And for this round, the second round, now we have sponsors, so they will get paid, but still, I mean, not as much as they should get paid, like pretty much less than half of what they would get paid normally.
But all of the proceeds from it.
All the proceeds
goes
go
to-
to Mount Sinai.
And you told me yesterday that they don't have a lot of funding. Is that true? Or like still?
They need help. I mean, they definitely need the funds, and everything that we actually from last year's event, they already told me they hired a whole new person to help out, and so they divide the proceeds to go towards lower income families, so people who can't afford to be even diagnosed. They would the monies would go towards that, or towards research, towards treatment.
Yeah, because the stigma with ADHD, like I remember going into the schools and seeing kids on Ritalin and being upset by it. But I'm reading some articles here that say that the myth is that Ritalin is like cocaine, and the failure to give youngsters drug holidays from Ritalin causes them to develop psychosis. So Ritalin is medically prescribed stimulant medication that is chemically different from cocaine. The therapeutic use of, I can't say that word, see, methylphenidate does not cause, see, when I put these reading glasses on, say word, not cause addiction or dependence, and does not lead to psychosis. Some children have such severe ADD symptoms that it can be dangerous for them to have a medication holiday. For example, a child who is so hyper and impulsive, he'll run into traffic without stopping, and hallucinations happen and rare side effects. So it's interesting because I have heard the stigma of Ritalin, haven't you?
Yeah, my sister had that too with my little nephew, and he was extremely hyper, and so she vacillated about putting him on, drugs pretty much. And so, but he was doing, he couldn't sit still in school. I mean, so you are, the decision is whether you have a kid that's, you don't want to drug or you want to try to do other means to do it. And on the other hand, he's missing vital things fundamentally out of, his young age. So what do you do? And so she chose Ritalin, and it worked for him. And she took weekends off with him sometimes.
But I think that medication is a lot of times it's like the last resort, and
people don't really want to do it,
right? Yeah. And Mount Sinai is not going there to say we're just gonna medicate your kids. That's not how it works. There's a diagnosis. There's other alternatives. There's I know that there's nutritional ways things to avoid.
Oh, really? Like what?
I know that I was reading about
Right. It's sugar. It's
it's
things that have a lot of
common sense stuff.
Color, things that have a lot of coloring in it, exacerbates it. A lot of processed foods.
Yeah, I know families, like full families who have ADHD, each and every person in those families, and they all go vegan, and they claim that works. Now, another side effects of having ADHD is anxiety, because when you can't focus and you can't complete tasks, that makes you anxious because you're like, what am I doing? When am I going to finish, what I got to do? And that causes anxiety. So I was just reading also that people with ADHD are more likely to get injured because,
that makes sense.
So it's it's not a good thing to have. It's very...
yes, it was like a joke for a while, like ADHD. People joke about it. Like everyone would say, "Oh, I got ADD," so it became more of a joke than taken seriously when you think about a kid running into traffic.
Yeah, ADD is totally different from ADHD, which is like the physical component where you just cannot sit still, and a lot of that is a lot of exercise too helps.
Exercise, exactly. I have friends who just have their kids in every possible physical activity, extracurricular thing they can do after school just to get that energy out. And I know that with my brother, for example, I pretty much think that his life went the wrong way because he had ADHD. Like, he couldn't excel in school. He was thrown out of school because they thought he was a class clown. He wasn't a class clown. He just couldn't do it, So getting thrown out of school, that already sends your life in a different direction. If there was only more understanding, so that's why the bringing in awareness is just such a big part of this. And nowadays, there's so much more awareness, but it is a process because people still are embarrassed about talking about any kind of mental issue they have, and learning disorders. It's not something anybody should ever be ashamed of. It's just not.
Yeah.
But hey, Keisha got it. Keisha get it. Because it is, and it's because I've told everyone I'm trying to live a vegan lifestyle, plant-based.
Vegan?
I'm going to say plant-based. I was told aggressively to say plant-based by Chloe Hilliard.
So
No,
you can go to
It
the.
made me feel like I misgendered
You
a
can get free
vegetable.
tickets and you qualify for the free tickets.
They vegetable.
I do for the Beyonce. Oh, yeah. Let me get my glasses on for that. So yes, Beyonce, because I do think that's good that in that program they do offer a diet as an option over just because medicating it does make people kind of nervous these days. That is a reality.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, if it's needed. But yeah, Beyonce. Where is she?
Who just stop saying her name like that?
I'm sorry.
It takes all the sexy out of her name.
Beyonce. Beyonce posted on Instagram that she'll choose someone to get free Beyonce and Jay-Z tickets for life if they go vegan. This is a joint project with Green Print. And the project has other initiatives like plant-based breakfast and meatless Mondays. Basically, she and Jay-Z want us to assimilate to a plant-based lifestyle with this Green Print project, which includes, yes, and as with any healthy diet, you start with baby steps and then you make it a lifestyle. It's good for the planet, too. So I would say since I've gone, I'm having a tough time. Because I thought I was having a conversation this weekend at the event, the Imagine Society, with a woman. I thought I was all like high and mighty talking about going vegan. I was talking to her while eating cheese pizza. I didn't realize it until like hours later.
It was real cheese.
It was real cheese.
Oh, God.
And I didn't realize it until
Did you
later.
not know what vegan was?
Listen. Like I said, I'm new at this.
Okay.
And it was like hours later, I'm like, oh, that's why she was looking at me kind of crazy. Like, I was
So
like,
how long you been
how come her
vegan?
facial expressions ain't changed? How come she's not smiling? And I was like, yeah, it's just so much better for you to be vegan. And, it's so, people don't understand us.
There's always that thing that trips you up about veganism. It's like, for me, it's always been pizza, like you say, and schnitzel. You know what schnitzel is? It's like a chicken cutlet that's fried, breaded chicken cutlet. Those two things, like it's so hard to live without. That breaks me every time. So.
Yeah. Well, I think that's why it's probably good to say plant-based, because plant-based is not restricting you necessarily.
Yeah, the
say
chicken
that.
ate plant. So.
Yeah, you're just trying. I mean, since I've been doing it, I had a good day on Friday.
Plant-based doesn't mean animal.
Huh?
No,
plant-based means though, from what Chloe was telling me, like it doesn't restrict you. Like you're vegan is very strict.
Yeah.
Right.
Plant-based means like
what's
you trying.
The
as far as what Chloe was telling people,
I'll ask Chloe what the definition is.
people are less likely to attack you for
you say
eating
plant.
cheese on something if you say you're plant-based. That's what
well,
she
that's
said.
vegetarian then. I mean,
Yeah, and
Well, I got yelled at for saying
and
vegetarian.
And cheese ain't a plant.
Listen, okay, I had a lot of cheese last night, and I'm gonna just tell you, you guys are this is a rough day for me. So, but I'm trying, but it's like I was bloated for like a week. My whole belly was just extended. I thought I put on weight, but
because of cheese.
It was because I was accidentally getting all of this fake meat.
fake meat.
And the fake meat has a lot of sodium in it.
I see.
It also has a lot of them have soy products, and soy is
Yes.
bean, which bloats you.
So I'm learning, and I'm doing it because my sister has lupus, and I'm trying to help her to lead a plant-based lifestyle too, so she can get better. And I was you see, I'm having problems with my pronouns here.
No, I'm not laughing at that. I'm laughing at like you trying to help her do something that you haven't done.
Well, this is exactly right. I was yelling at her about doing it, and I hadn't done it.
Right.
So I was telling her, like Gina Yasher, it was like, tell your sister that she must get on. She would hate me right now, Gina, if I was doing this accent.
Do it.
She goes, tell your sister, does she want to live a good life or a bad life? So I was like, yeah. So I kept yelling at her, but then I realized I can't yell at her when I'm not doing it.
Gina's vegan, right?
But Gina has breaks. She breaks too.
Every once in a while.
I've seen her eat.
I think I could be a vegan if I could have a break every week.
I think it's okay to have a break, but I think it's good if you want to help someone.
Friday night
vegan, or are you mostly vegetarian? I think you're giving your body a break.
Yeah, you give your body. I think it's a good break, and I have noticed some good changes. Like my focus has been like so much better. and my sinuses, like I was having sinus issues that are now.
Dairy is really bad for
Yes.
any
It really
inflammation.
is.
Yeah.
But I think it's just good for everyone just to start paying attention to what you're putting into your body. Like processed foods, I still don't really understand what it. I'll be eating something and someone's like, "That's processed food," and I go, "It is?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What is processed foods exactly?"
Most food in America.
It's food that has a element where
It's changed.
they are putting it together. They binding products together to make one product. So like a turkey breast is it's just a turkey and then take off the breast, but you can have like smoked turkey things and whatever, and they put parts of that and other things to make it taste better and make
Is
it
that fillers or
and fillers and whatever, and so and they'll put it in like a turkey jerky, and that is a processed thing.
And a lot of vegan foods
Is processed.
is processed. So that's what I was learning.
So
I would have been telling my
would be
sister
better.
to eat processed food without realizing had I not tried the diet myself. So now she's sending me photos of food. She's learning about it. She's excited about it because we're challenging each other.
Right.
So it's been like a fun game, almost like a video game.
I mean, I think everything needs to be done in moderation. I mean, even for me, like
moderation.
I love tofu. Love tofu.
They
And
make
then I
like
find out-
scrambled eggs to me. They
I
taste
do.
like it.
I love tofu in any form, but then my nutritionist was like, it's loaded with calories. For some reason, there's much more calories in tofu than in a piece of chicken.
But calories don't matter as far
Yeah,
as
it
like,
matters
if
to
you're
me
working out.
sometimes, but
If you're working out, it's not the calories. It's the fat content, the sugar.
yeah, but also tofu, which is soy, right? It's a soy product. Messes with. I was reading about it. Messes with your estrogen levels. So
I gotta be careful then.
we don't want to eat too much of that either.
Okay.
So there's always like they found that women who drink too much soy milk have issues. I don't know.
Right, yeah,
I
I've
don't want
heard
to say
that
anything
too.
that's not correct.
No,
but
I've heard
yeah,
that too. So I'm
read that.
watching. I just, it's like seeing that video that my sister sent me of like gluten free, soy free, vegan free, and it was just air. Because it's just so hard. Like I even said it on stage to someone who was. I said, "Oh, is there any vegans in the room?" And this girl raised her hand. I said, "Was it hard for you?" She was from another country, so she was arrogant when she said to me, "I just read the labels."
Yeah.
And I said, "Excuse me, but in America we do that too. But the labels lie."
No, well, actually, if you read the labels, you'll know if a thing is processed. Because if usually, if you read the labels of things are one or two if it's a can of beans, water. Salt. Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay.
So if you reading a processed label and it has like 18 ingredients.
Monosomal.
Yeah, anything you can't pronounce, basically. Like if you can't pronounce it, don't eat it.
Well, most
my
food in the
rule.
States is processed, which is funny.
Yeah.
I remember one time I was doing all this health kind of stuff a couple years ago.
Health stuff.
I know, it's like
You couldn't even say health.
Well, it was like I really was going down the rabbit hole in terms
we
of
all
my
know
diet.
that didn't work out. Well,
You know,
just in the opening statement.
Well, I'm telling you, but when I remember I did this thing. I don't know if it's kind of, this is a little deep, deep in there. But you ever had a colonic?
No, but I
No,
need
thanks.
one. I guess.
Yeah. Well, it's like
Or is that different from a colonoscopy?
Yeah, it's like it's voluntary and has nothing to do with cancer or anything like that, right? So essentially what it is they put a tube up your bum and like they kind of hose you out.
Yeah.
But it's so it sounds weird, but at the same time it's also good for your digestive tract. So I remember when I was doing it with this guy, some new age guy. I was doing all this new age shit. It was like all this new age stuff I was doing, and like he was telling me that because ancestrally I have not that much processed food that I've eaten. Like, you know what I mean? Like, like before me, there was no processed food, basically, right? Because I'm originally from Kenya and like all our food is organic because it's just from wherever it's from, right?
Right.
So like,
out the backyard.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. And he told me, he was like, yeah, like you're really lucky. And I was like, I'm really lucky. And he's like, yeah, like for multiple generations in the United States, people have been eating processed food, and only in the recent, I feel like in the past like 30 years, that people become really aware to what extent the food that they're eating
has
isn't.
effect on them.
Yeah, because I mean, there was a study came out like 2-3 years ago where the FDA said that most meat in the United States is carcinogenic.
Yeah.
They actually came out with a statement, and I was like, what? You know what I mean?
Right.
What does that mean?
Dairy meat.
Again?
It's
Carcinogenic.
cancerous.
Cancerous. most meat in the
Most
United
daily
States.
meat.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
why someone was saying to me, you could still, I think Chloe was telling me, you could still eat like grass. I said, meat? I said, no, but it's not just that. Because she's saying I was from Africa,
Mhm.
like, because I'm my blood type, eat for your blood type.
Right.
So eat certain meats for your blood. I said, but like you said,
Mhm.
it's carcinogen, so no.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
can't.
yeah. You have to, I mean, there's definitely clean meat, chicken, whatever. But the fact of the matter is, I think we're also understanding what Beyonce is talking about is like, literally humans have been doing things that are like not only good for, they're bad for our biology. Like you're not supposed to drink milk for your entire adult life
No.
after you're a baby. Like,
you're
you know what I
not
mean?
supposed to eat.
Yeah,
You're not
like-
eating
Milk in
a
general.
cow's milk.
Yeah, exactly. Not
That's
some foreign animal.
Yeah, a foreign animal that gets to 400 to 500 pounds.
Right.
You're drinking their milk to sustain them.
Yeah, it's like cuckoo. Like so
Yeah.
we're not supposed to do that, and also eating meat. It's and at the level of meat that we're eating. Like we eat so much meat. It's
See, that's the
causing
thing.
literal like holes in the ozone from like just literally the gas that cows emit is actually
same.
like increasing, I think, the methane in the atmosphere.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like so because and we just shouldn't be eating this much meat. Like we're out of balance.
I was
Yeah.
talking to my mother about that because when we were growing up, we did not have that much meat. So my mother would cook a big meal on Sunday, which usually could be a brisket or fried chicken or whatever. That would roll over to leftovers on Monday, and then like Tuesday, Wednesday, and whatever, we would be eating like beans and cornbread. We would be eating just stuff that didn't have meat in it, or just very small pieces of meat. So when I was a vegetarian, and I was like, "Mama, we didn't eat meat every day." I said, "So you eat meat every day now?" And she's like, "I try." I was like, "Dang." Because for them, it wasn't about health as much as it was just about cost.
Cost,
Meat was
exactly,
expensive,
exactly.
especially when you had kids. You had 3 or 4 kids to feed.
I'm glad
Now,
you
that's
said
interesting
that
'cause someone
because we had the same thing where my mom used to take one chicken and make it work, man. She would make that one chicken last for a month. She would cut it into pieces and make sure that piece is for that meal. We would mostly eat vegetarian throughout the week, and then for Shabbat dinner, for like Friday night, we would have the chicken, or the beef, and then most of the week it would just be vegetarian. It was most about cost because meat was expensive.
That's
Right.
interesting
So
because
And we
someone
had
was telling me
stools,
that being a vegetarian is an expensive thing to do now.
here,
And and now you're saying that's
I don't think it. I think vegetarianism can be expensive because when you start doing all organic products, and our society is topsy turvy, it shouldn't even be a word called organic. Because it should be
I know, 'cause
food.
they lying.
It should be food and GMO.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
That's what it should. It should be food.
Right.
Why do we have to label the things
Right.
that is natural?
Right.
That should be that doesn't have any poisons on
That's
it.
what they
or
do
any-
in Kenya. In Kenya, it's this food and this GMO.
Exactly. That's how it should be. That's
Genetically
how it
modified
is in most
organisms, yeah.
in most countries. It's like that.
well.
We-
I will
we're-
say, since I've started going plant-based, I have cooked more. I cook more, and I stopped ordering food online. Like and
wow,
and
that's big.
big for me.
It really
That
is.
is, and
I mean,
I've learned
to cook. Yeah.
Because I realized even the fake meat was preventing me from actually doing the work of cooking the
Yeah.
vegetables. And so now I do want to talk about, this was a great conversation about health because I think it's so important what you're doing.
Thank
really,
you.
Limor. I do want to talk about crossing the picket line. And did anyone watch the Super Bowl? And I'm going to ask in that way.
No.
Did you?
No.
I
Uh-oh.
did watch.
Uh-oh.
And I went
All
up.
the
And I wanted to.
Pat
This is
Brown
crazy too. This is so crazy because I like to tweet on big events, and so Super Bowl I definitely wanted to tweet, but then I was going through my Twitter feed, and then it's like people were like saying and. Those people that are watching it, whatever, and I was like, and I was reading all those, and I was like, I can't tweet. It's one thing to sit in my apartment and watch it by myself, but it's another thing to tweet about it and make reference to it. And so I was
Because
like,
I thought that's got to be difficult because, like, I saw pictures of, like people at Super Bowl games, and then they put them on Instagram, and some people were like, be mad at me afterwards.
Yeah.
But what's the difference between watching the Super Bowl and what Gladys Knight did? Is there a difference, really?
I think
Good question.
That's a very good question.
Like she
because
made the choice to sing the national anthem, and as she said, it was her place to represent us. So
not that song. I agree with people that we need to change that song. But that song is so racist to black people. But that's such a good question because I did it for entertainment, but the fact that nobody knew that I was watching it. I mean, public shaming is very
it's real.
It's real.
scary.
Yeah. It's very effective. Very effective. So it's one thing for me to watch it, give them my little viewership that they know that so many people watched it. It's another thing to have a cause and know that you are representing people saw you cross that picket line, this intellectual picket line, because that's what it is. It's one thing to do that. I feel like if she did it in 2020, maybe that's different because it wouldn't be so fresh. But this man lost a job because of that. Well,
I guess Gladys Knight defended herself to perform at the because. During the Today Show, Hoda read a statement from Gladys saying that Gladys says she's a person who's been on the forefront of the civil rights movement, battle, marching, protesting, and has done more than some of the people giving their opinions. So, and Hoda said, hats off to Gladys. So it's like, my question is, and Gladys was saying that song, there's been a lot of, opinions about the national anthem, but she says that song it makes her feel a certain way. It meant something to her, and I do kind of go on this thing of, now we always argue about being monolithic, right? Mm-hmm. Can we also aren't monolithic in our protest either?
Well, we're not, and I get that we're not. But this is what that song is all about, fake patriotism. That song is about the people that are upset about Colin Kaepernick kneeling is about fake patriotism. It has nothing to do with the song. And so for that reason, maybe she's justified in singing the song because it doesn't have anything to do with the song. It's just people's feeling like she shouldn't appear there, and also entertaining for the NFL. But that is all about fake patriotism, because if you really cared about veterans wouldn't have to, there wouldn't be so many veterans on the street. It wouldn't have to be so many veterans that have problems with mental illness because you would take care of them when they come back from these wars. Mm-hmm. There wouldn't be so many veterans that are literally broke because they can't afford things because they came back from the war. We don't fucking care about veterans. We care about the idea of America without even making any sacrifices for America.
So how did you put all that aside and then watch?
I'm not saying that.
Right.
I'm not saying that. But I put it all aside.
Because it's an easy one for me because I don't watch football. So it's an easy protest for me.
Right. So this is the reason that I watched, because nobody was watching.
Oh, you want to tell us about it?
Nobody was watching me watch.
Oh, nobody was watching you.
Right. You're right. So nobody saw me watch. I didn't go to a Super Bowl party or whatever.
Right.
And
you're a football fan, right? Or?
Yes,
So
that's why I didn't. And then I didn't tweet, which was really big for me. So I made some sacrifices. I wanted to see Brady lose. He beat my Kansas City Chiefs.
Who won actually? Who?
They did.
The Patriots?
The Patriots.
Oh, really? She said, like, what the hell's up with that? I was celebrating Janet Jackson Appreciation Day, so that's the alternative holiday.
Is that on the
every
day?
year on Super Bowl Sunday?
That is fucking. I didn't know. That'd be so great.
Yeah.
I loved her nipple.
Yeah.
I wish I could have saw that.
That's
No, she's now, I think this year gotten into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, which apparently was not an easy feat, and her career seems to be going pretty well, and I saw she got really played out by Justin Timberlake, who's living his best life.
Well, Justin Timberlake doesn't have any power at the end of the day. It was Les Moonves.
Yeah, Les Moonves
from
for sure.
CBS.
He was the one who was
Black
he was shitting on her for a long time.
No wonder it all comes full circle.
Yeah, the power brokers that be.
But I
didn't apologize sufficiently for that. in his opinion.
I hear you though, and I hear you because Les Moonves was a former head of CBS, so he was the one who blackballed Janet for years, for like 7 years after the incident. He made it an issue, but at the same time, I kind of feel like JT. Like I like JT, but like I didn't like the way he handled that.
Now.
Huh?
I'm over him now.
Oh, really? Yeah. But his latest album was questionable. But at the same time, like, I really was disappointed by how he navigated that. And even now, years later, I don't know why he hasn't. I don't know. Like,
I got arrested afterwards by ISIS.
Who?
Someone
Oh, you talking about the young rapper?
Uh-huh.
No, I'm talking about Justin Timberlake.
Oh,
No,
yeah.
I think he.
Look, I'm so out of
Yeah.
I'm like, Jake, who that?
No, it was that young Atlanta rapper, right? He was arrested by ICE, which is interesting.
Yeah, you were thinking. I was thinking anyway that Justin Timberlake was an ally, and I just sensed from all of everything that's come out and up until even his last album, he's just not. He's just surfing to get, to get fame and fortune or whatever, and just riding, the coattails of black people and black people's
I
sound.
think that he's copying Michael Jackson. Every song sounds to me like a copy of a Michael Jackson song.
Well, I do want to say that Limor said something hilarious yesterday when we were talking about Gladys. Can you please repeat that? Because it was so funny.
So I don't really.
Because Cardi B didn't do it, but you were saying.
So Marina tells me that Cardi B was criticizing Gladys Knight. And
Cardi B was asked to perform at the Super
glasses
was asked to perform at the Super Bowl and turned down a lot of money when she decided not. She says she has mixed feelings about the NFL after how Colin was treated in his protest. But her husband and friends love football and wanted her to do it, but in the end she decided not to attend. But I think she still watched. But
no, she had Super Bowl parties.
She had Super Bowl parties, and then she said some stuff. But I didn't even know about that. I think you said that she criticized Gladys Knight. And I think that's what it was, and that's what I was reacting to. And I said, who the hell is she to criticize someone like Gladys Knight? I mean, with all due respect, I mean, Cardi B criticizing.
Well, one.
But you also said, this is what you said. That you don't remember, but I do.
I remember it was like.
I was waiting for.
You
said Cardi B got some options. I mean,
there it is.
She said
Cardi B got some options.
All right, let's see Cardi B in 30 years. Okay,
if she's still Gladys Knight's got lounges. She don't go to the lounge.
What options? I mean, you know what I mean?
What options does Gladys Knight? Now I know Gladys has options, but it was just funny.
She said that Gladys has options. Oh no, she doesn't have options.
I know basically what I'm saying is
Gladys is like, I don't want to do Foxwoods.
So that's the thing too, problematically. So this is also why I can't judge Gladys too much too, because those artists in that day got ripped off so bad. So Gladys should be, who knows how much money she has.
Exactly.
She should, and if she was a white woman with her talent and her years and her experience, she could make a decision.
Right.
That's exactly what I was saying.
That had nothing to do with money. Now, a lot of these artists, if you take that the financial matters out of it and they purely make a decision based on whether they feel like they want to support it or not, then that's fair. But you putting money in, like Chrisette Michele when she did it, she needed the money.
Yeah.
I know, but also even Cardi B was saying how we're gonna do parties, we're gonna make money out of your money, out of that, like the way, like.
She said she's making money off the NFL, not the NFL making money off her.
But what's the difference then? I mean, so Gladys Knight is also making money off of.
Well, it is different because she's Cardi B's party, the party that she's throwing, is a party where people paying her to come to her party, and she's still in it. So she's using the NFL for her party, and instead of the NFL using her. That's what her point was.
Well, I mean, I don't know. Isn't she getting paid directly by the NFL? Is even better. She's taking their own, like their money.
No, I mean,
what I'm saying is,
Gladys
Knight. Also like Cardi B. Okay, why did you talk to us in 30 years when you were no longer relevant? And then see what options you have.
Hopefully she does really well with her money, but she's making way more money.
More money than Gladys Knight ever did. I mean,
probably,
these artists were
and see,
ripped
this
off.
is the argument I was going to say, by the way, was that has come full circle for me. Even with the Women's March and all of these things of protests, right? Is this division amongst older and younger.
Yeah.
Now, I was listening to these kids on Saturday, and one of them said, well, we can't worry about old folks. We just worry about changing young minds. And I said, well, hey, hold on. You don't want me around?
Yeah.
You're not gonna. You don't want to communicate with me. You don't want to talk to me anymore. And a lot of the young kids have made a decision that they can't change us. And so, but the thing is like, and Whoopi brought up this on The View, and I keep hearing this from younger people, millennials too, is like.
And you know
this,
there's another one
well,
after
just
Z. It keeps going.
It's
like,
just that there is no respect for the older generation that had to go through a lot of things.
I agree that might be a.
So we need to start listening to each other.
It might be a sticking point, but also I have to really applaud these young people, because young people they're coming up in a time where they're expecting women to have equality. They are coming up in a time when they feel like they should have that income inequality shouldn't exist, and college shouldn't be so expensive. And so when you had just like people that came out against R. Kelly, a lot of people that actually were in the music business that came out against him, young guys, were the 20 some odds. Like,
right.
Fuck him, he did this and that. And so nobody in their 40s that were in the music business were saying that before this documentary came out. It was young people saying that.
Well, what I'm saying is that while that's true, there are a lot of older people who had to go through this stuff that these young kids won't have to go through. Like some of the women,
I agree.
Yeah, some of the women that had to deal with the R. Kellys of the world, right, or who have to deal with the Louis C.K.'s of the world.
Had to
some
get
of
the
those,
pussy grab.
they had to maneuver through that. And so there's trauma from that, and there's experience from that, and so they do talk from that perspective that young kids don't want to hear or don't respect, I think.
Yeah, but also we talk from, and I'm not distancing them from me either, because I'm sure I do it too. You also talk from the being internalized this patriarchy, and sometimes you don't even realize that you do it.
Right.
Yeah, and so for them, that is a disconnect for them.
Right.
And so I think there is some compromise to be made, but we also have to see, meaning people of my generation, Gen Xers and baby boomers and all those, have to see that we are talking from a place where that was status quo and we internalized it.
Right.
Yeah, and it might not be, and some of our answers, some of our actions are speak to that.
Right.
Well, I mean, what I'd say to that is like, so the way I conduct my life, I have many intergenerational relationships. I'm 36.
Well, look at you.
No, but I just do. like real talk. I try to actually I test things out. You know what I mean? Like in the sense that with this rally that we did for the Women's March 3rd annual celebration or commemoration in January in New York City, we did this rally at Foley Square. I had Gloria Steinem there, who's 84. I had Stacey Ann Chin, who's there, who's like probably maybe in her 50s. Don't want to age you, Stacey. I love you. And then we had union labor organizers who were in their 40s and 50s and 60s. We had two girls. One was 14. One was 16. We had myself. We had Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who's 28.
Oh,
we had,
I like to be there.
You know what I mean? Yeah, and we had other folks there too. All kinds of different. We had the women's building. People were behind this new women's building, which is this prison that's being converted to a women's nonprofit institution in Chelsea area, and we had it was this representation of in my mind, women who I admire, who I have some connection to, who are of different age groups and different cultural experiences, but all had tools and points of intersection I could see, right? I could actually see. And when you put it all together, it all made sense. I think one of the things that's kind of, a little tricky in this modern technological age is we don't realize that they were already intergenerational, networks that we had throughout the history of mankind. The grandmother was there,
That's true.
the
That's
auntie was
true.
there, the mom's there, the kids there. We were all there in the same, space together. And I think in this modern age, we're losing an idea of place and tradition and space.
Right.
So, maybe what Whoopi's speaking to is that she can sense to some extent that kids are growing up way more alienated. They don't necessarily even just know who the people are in their family in certain ways. And that's a larger societal problem. But then on the other hand, too, even though I think there's been the amount of mistakes that young people I think have grown up seeing adults make in this era is I would imagine pretty impressive. Like, you know what I mean? Like in terms of like you're talking about 2 wars that are completely BS. You're talking about like a financial crisis that was like completely man-made. You're talking about you're talking about a presidency that's like literally might topple the United States, right?
Right.
And they're seeing adults make these decisions.
Yes.
So like, and they're not
overwhelmingly
stupid.
so.
Yeah, they're not,
this never happened before.
Yeah, you don't.
That they've seen adults making this many mistakes.
I don't think
this didn't happen in the 70s.
I think you saw the mistakes, but the technology and your agency as an individual young person to actually affect the world is different. Mm-hmm. Now at 12 years old, I could create a blog and end up at the UN doing a lecture in like 2 seconds. So the sense of agency the young people have to affect their reality is different. And the abdication of adults is different. I frankly think adults have been like phoning it in on like so many levels. I'm personally not very impressed by the adult population in the United States right now. Like I feel like people could do a better job of taking care of our communities and our children because we're not doing a great job of that.
Well,
that's
how do
also
we do
because
because we can't keep saying you're not doing the right. How do we? Because like. I like the fact that Jeannie asked me to be there. I said, now, next time you do this, you need to have either more comics of my age in the room seeing this, because I learned something. Right. And that was affecting me in a way that I'm seeing kids that I didn't even know were talking about homophobia. That blew my mind. I've worked with kids before. I've never seen kids say the word homophobia. So that's changing me as a comic. As far as like writing material, understanding who's in the audience and what they're aware of. And I think comics could get, because I've heard a lot of talk about comedy being under siege or a profession being under siege. And I'm thinking maybe you won't think that if you put yourself in the room with these young minds and you hear what they're talking about. I would not even imagine a 10-year-old saying fake news.
Well, I mean, the tensions that we're even seeing that comedy is experiencing, anyone who's a free thinker or challenging the status quo, whether you're an activist, comedian, any other artist, intellectual, innovative entrepreneur, all of those folks are challenging the status quo. And I feel that it's easier to attack those people than to necessarily like try to figure out why am I made so uncomfortable by the thing that they've presented to me? Right. Like, what is making me so upset? And I think young people in this era, because young minds are always sponges. We always say if you want a child to learn a language, if you want a child to learn a certain kind of innovation in terms of their thinking, you give it to them when they're young. So these young people their minds are just as fertile as any young mind in the history of time, but they're also growing up with all this technology and new information and just everything just kind of be more available. So I'm not surprised that they are evolving at the rate that we are evolving as a people. The problem is that the systems, the way they function, they're like 20th century systems. They're 19th century systems. And as we become adults and we have to kind of accommodate the system more than when we did when we were young, when you kind of had your parents kind of boxing with the system to some extent more. When people get older, 30 years old, when you start really figuring out, I got to get a mortgage, I got to pay these bills, I got to quote unquote grow up, people make decisions, I think, that we're now realizing in 2019 that there's a better way to live than just by going along. Like, you should choose how you want to live your life and what you think is morally right for you to do. And I think, like you said, how do we do that? I legit really believe that people need to take some sort of personal stock of themselves. If there's one thing I could ask in 2019 ahead of 2020, which is a very important year, not only for elections, but in general because of this atmosphere, take a beat, like look inside and try to figure out how are you actually conducting your life that maybe violates your quote unquote value system. If you have a value system that you think is great in terms of maybe being kind to strangers, are you really doing that every day?
Yeah, like, taking a beat is such a, because I think that's something people can do. Right. But sometimes it's hard to do. But if you remind people, just take a moment. Yeah. Like, I smile at people. Yeah. You know, like, when I walk, I do pass. Yes, you do. In the subway sometimes, because sometimes I'm in a bad mood and I'll realize it. And then, you know what I've noticed?
Crazy eyes.
Yeah. But I have noticed something, especially because we're all so divided. A lot of times, if you just smile at people, right, you can change
someone's whole day. Yeah.
You really can, and their perception of you.
Right.
It's a hard thing to do.
Throw them a kiss and lick my lips.
Oh. I
you how much I love you for saying all the things you were saying. It's like it resonates so much, and every little thing we do, every single minute of our day, can make your life so much better and someone else's, even just by giving them that smile. It's the validation that they're there. They exist and they matter.
Mm-hmm.
I think the biggest thing you can do for someone is to let them know that they matter.
Mm-hmm.
And when they know that they matter, then maybe they'll think about every step they make because they know it makes a difference. But I think that the most destructive thing is when people think they don't matter and their decisions are not important, so they can do whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And then that's when society falls apart. When
And
people don't believe their voice matters, their vote matters.
Mm-hmm.
That's one thing.
And you bring up such a good point, Limor.
For a
you were doing
change.
you were doing a great job. She was so nervous about being here today because
I was
of
nervous
this
about
thing.
meeting Agunda because she's like so impressive.
But this is the thing, like you see that it's just a regular conversation. You don't
I'm in my own world lately, so
a
I'm
lot of what I remind our listeners is we're not experts. I mean, Agunda's more of one, but we're not. We're just having real conversations, and I think that's what's lost in America is this ability to just talk. Because you learn from hearing yourself. Sometimes I've learned that I'm like, oh my God, did I think that? And then you can change. The things about matter, people who matter, and what you were bringing up about the internet and getting things out there is what happened this week with the inmates.
Right.
And no heat.
Right.
And, I'm thinking about, okay, so this is what happened, right? In New York City, inmates at the Metropolitan Detention Center, this really struck me, in Brooklyn were reportedly living without electricity or heat during the polar vortex with temperatures that were below freezing. Now, these were inmates who weren't all convicted felons. They were
a lot of these cats are just waiting to be actually sent to trial to actually get charges, even formal charges.
But I would never. Let's think about without the internet.
Where?
I'm here on a DUI. Let me out.
Yeah.
Go to work.
We wouldn't have even heard about this.
Right.
Because and then the question is, still though, after hearing about it, why did it take so long? I mean, the electricity was turned on this morning, I think.
Yeah.
You know what I'm
I think
saying?
it came on yesterday.
Like, where was the urgency?
I mean, I know the
I don't
organizers.
know how long it's been though. How long were they
Since
without
the
it?
11 days.
11 days.
No electricity or heat.
Wow.
Through the worst of it, yeah.
I didn't
And they
realize
didn't.
it
They
was that
didn't even
long.
have like sweaters and shit. They just had like shirts.
No, I saw the video and I was
Yeah.
like, wow.
Yeah.
I hate to be cold.
I know, me too.
Me too.
It's torture. They use
Yeah.
that. That's a form of torture. You actually
These
make people cold.
allegations
Yeah.
are a
Yeah.
violation.
I
of
want to murder
human-
somebody.
Came in for like
Came in
a
for
turnstile ticket, like, throwing up the clip of murder. We're like,
Yeah.
so
And-
cold I have to kill someone.
Yeah.
But the thing is like some people may have dismissed it as, like you were saying, like they're just felons anyway. They're in jail. They did bad things, so let them be cold.
Right.
But the thing is like
No, they have rights too.
They have these allegations are a violation of human decency and dignity. They also raise questions of potential violations of law. Government owes a fundamental responsibility to serve all people, and the Federal Bureau of Prisons need to live up to that responsibility. I want answers. This is what Cuomo is saying. Those responsible held accountable.
He is running for president.
Yeah.
I know.
Running for president.
Yeah, you're right.
He is. I want answers. Really?
But I think
At
that's
a
the
Brooklyn
thing.
prison, is that what you're worried about? Got the whole state to worry about?
They named a guy in the article that is the manager of the facility, and then I didn't see it, like someone took it out or something. But it is a good question: who's accountable for any of this stuff lately?
I mean, I think we are accountable. I think that's the unfortunate thing everyone's kind of settling on, even with this calamity of the American election, and then also watching all these judgeships go, and you're looking at the Supreme Court, you're looking at the head of the DOJ and the head of the Department of Defense are two bozos, basically. I mean, the Department of Defense guy, he was a Boeing executive, so he does have some skills. The other guy, Whitaker, who's the head of the DOJ, I can't even take him seriously at all. And the fact of the matter is that there are a lot of institutions for a long period of time have not been operating in the best interest of the public or the people generally. And the prison system is like, the American prison system is just, it's just chattel
It's a whole-
slavery.
yeah.
I mean, it's literally just a system not about rehabilitation or about
It's about profit.
yeah, I mean, absolutely.
But that's the thing. It's like that's why I was wondering if it is about profit and these are employees and it is managed by someone like a business. When you say the
all
business
of
is
them are
bad,
not for
But I'm
profit, but a
Mhm.
lot of the prisons and detention centers have pulled resources from actually trying to educate or trying to change inmates in any way. It's all about them getting in. We're doing bare minimum, and then you getting out, and then hopefully you come back because that's how we keep these prisons open.
it's really cynical. It's real awful because when you think about it, for them it's like, oh, they saved 11 days of electricity and power. I mean, the organizers showed up on I think Friday, no Saturday, and we're out there really kind of pushing it out. More and more people came in. And they were like, the families hadn't been able to
God
see.
bless them.
You know what I'm saying? Like, the families hadn't been able to see anybody. They didn't know if anyone was what your condition was. If you don't know where your family member is, you don't know what condition they're in. And generally speaking, I mean, cold is serious. You can, plenty of people even
people had asthma.
Yeah.
There was a guy talking about he thought he was going to die. He had head injuries.
Yeah. I mean, there was a guy who was just wheezing on the floor. A politician came and just saw this guy who had no asthma medication, just literally just there on the floor, just breathing very slowly. And it's something where these people are not seen as people. And I think what this...
That is the big problem.
Right.
With
Right.
This, yeah.
I mean, it's deep. I mean, it really is something where you're like, these cats were in there during those cold nights, right? And probably cement kind of laden spaces, right? Which weren't a lot of heat.
Stuff, they said some of them had to stuff the little, where the breeze comes in, the little cracks and stuff. But then you see on the news when you see them banging on the windows. And
they were apparently, from what I understand from the organizers I know who are out there.
I'm cold right now.
I'm
not okay with this.
You know what I'm saying?
Look at this.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
No, for real. Imagine.
I'm banging, Jay. Where's the heat?
No, I'm telling you.
Yeah.
Because it's something where they were just
and no access to their coats or
nothing.
anything to extra blankets maybe if you're gonna
something.
And if you watch this,
give motherfuckers tea.
if you watch, is it called Beale Street? Something on Beale Street.
I saw that.
Oh yeah.
It's so beautiful. I haven't finished it, but it's such a beautiful story about you see someone who's in there who is not guilty, and she's trying to communicate with her loved one the loss of a family, how a family member must feel with their loved one that's in there that they cannot reach. And I mean, the effects of that reach so much farther into generational trauma.
Yeah.
Family,
Right.
community trauma.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's deep. I mean, I think it was important for us on Super Bowl Sunday or Janet Jackson Appreciation Day that
I like that.
people, that organizers are also like, hey, in our own city, in New York and Brooklyn, there's this detention center where people are literally experiencing what we would call inhumane treatment.
Yes.
And they got the city to rally. I mean, I think the mayor also sent some blankets and some stuff over there. But it was a federal detention center, and they were even resistant to the help initially. So it's something where without the organizers aware of the issue, pushing the envelope, staying out there in the cold over the 2 nights, to bring attention to it, it wouldn't have us having this conversation right now. And also the thing is, I think what I found most disturbing about it was how for one, apparently those guys have been knocking on the windows for a while, so people could hear it who were in proximity.
Right.
And I guess they just didn't care. No one cared. Not the people, but so much as the institution didn't really care, right? And the people were looking for support. And then when these organizers actually took the effort to go out there on this weekend of opulence, this weekend where we're talking about the millions of dollars that are going to be going into some commercials.
Right.
You know what I mean? You're like, this is, comparatively. And then you have people who probably haven't even some of these cats haven't even been charged. It could have been any one of us if we lasted some weird, if you jump the turnstile. If you jump the turnstile and you don't show up to that thing they make you show up to,
Tickets.
you get a ticket and you can get a warrant. So I don't know what those
Parking
people were in there.
tickets.
Exactly,
There's
parking
this show
tickets.
on Netflix called First and Last, I think it's called.
Mm.
And that talks about, people who for anything. It doesn't matter what, you get taken, and even if you don't have enough money for bail,
Yeah.
you're just stuck.
Yeah.
Basically.
Yeah.
And
It
that's
could be
what
someone like
happens
that
a
who
lot
couldn't
too. If
afford
you don't have
bail.
money for
Yeah.
bail,
Yeah.
you are stuck in detention until until you have a
But
a
it's
trial.
so scary to see how easily your whole life can go upside down from nothing.
Yeah.
I mean, it's scary. Some of the stories, they're like, I'm not saying they're not guilty, a lot of them, but, you know,
Well,
little
Khalif
things.
Browder, right? Who they accused him of stealing a backpack. He was a kid from the Bronx.
Oh, yeah.
He didn't steal the backpack. He didn't have was it $1,000 or
Yeah.
$10,000 or whatever it was
Didn't
to
have the money
family
for
to-
bail,
yeah, this family to get him out of prison, and he never even got a trial. Kid was in the clink for like
Years.
3 or 4 years.
Yeah.
He's been in
They
there
was
for 3 years.
Yeah, he was in solitary confinement for the vast majority of that.
Mind you,
Yeah.
I am also a person who has someone who's affected my family who is in jail, and I'm saying this.
Mm.
You know, I mean, a lot of times we forget, like this personal attack. Why we distance ourselves from something like this, and a lot of times I think, someone who's in jail deserves to be in there. You just shouldn't have done the wrong thing. It takes a lot even for me to take a step back and go, wait, not everyone in there
Yeah.
is guilty. It takes
But
me a
even if
second.
they
And
are
also,
guilty,
the,
even if
and
they are
also
guilty,
be
they
because what
shouldn't-
we know the inequality of how black and brown people get arrested and the severity of their sentences. A lot of times, the reason that you were in jail, somebody else didn't go to jail for that same thing, and it's so awful that.
Tickets,
that
murder.
United States has more people in jail than some countries have people.
Right.
Honestly, and then you think about if you talk about nonviolent offenders, if you take those people out of jail, and have them like taxes, the money that we actually would make on taxes could fund so many other things.
Mhm.
But private entities are getting that money.
Right.
Now,
So, and we don't care about changing a person's, what is it we call when you put it in effect, have people in jail like get services and learn trades
Rehabilitation.
rehabilitation. We're not even doing that at all. That is gone. So we're not even effectively caring about our citizenry as soon as they go into
because
jail.
that's not the intention.
That is not the intention.
I do want to go on to something very positive.
Okay.
Because
We need it.
Black
Yeah.
excellence.
Yeah.
I say every week I get angry, but I forget about black excellence. I know that you're from Africa, right?
No,
All right.
nobody's gonna people are gonna be hating on me.
Where you
so
are from Africa?
it's
But I'm your own from Africa.
it
Yeah.
is Black History Month, so
It's a
we
continent,
should
so-
remember the people who've been overlooked. And I love this one person in here, Gladys Bentley. It was written by Giovanni Rusanello. A gender, that doesn't sound like a
love
Black
that.
History meme, but a gender-bending blues performer who became 1920s Harlem royalty. By the early 1930s, Bentley was Harlem's most famous lesbian figure, a significant distinction given that gay, lesbian, and gender-defying writers and performers were flourishing during the Harlem Renaissance.
They were.
For a time, she was amongst the best-known black entertainer in the United States. Bentley's rise to fame demonstrated how liberated the Prohibition culture of Harlem Renaissance had become and how welcoming the blues tradition could be to gay expression. She often confronted male entitlement and sexual abuse in her lyrics and declared her own sexual independence. This was, in fact, the continuation of a tradition begun by other singers of the early 20th century, particularly Bessie Smith, Ma Rainey, and Lucille Bogan, who were some of the most vocal musician critics of patriarchy of their time.
Mm.
So if you don't know her, go and do your research.
I read that.
Gladys Bentley.
I kept going down that rabbit hole, and it got more and more interesting. Just the
Isn't it great?
literal, and tell people what it is. It's New York Times. They are trying to rectify a wrong because
They released a list of overlooked black figures.
what they're trying to do is because they realize that their obituary sections have only been really about white men.
Mm-hmm.
And so they've tried, they have a series now, it's called The Overlook, which is more women and people of color. And so
Nice, yeah.
now that there's Black History Month, their focus is on Black history figures.
Mm.
But some of these individuals, it's such a beautiful thing to see these figures that prevailed under such dark situations as slavery and after slavery and during Jim Crow. But it's so sad too because in those same contexts they were they would have the legacy of having their children be rich and having their names be on buildings and whatever. But because of all those things that I mentioned before, slavery, Reconstruction, Jim Crow, a lot of them died penniless.
Yeah.
A lot of them got their got things stolen from them, money stolen from them. But it was
her story is so interesting. It could be a movie.
And it's so many stories similar to that. I'm talking about this. There was a man, they called him the Black Edison because he was an inventor, and his partner stole his patent and it made $1 million in Europe. Yeah, and he died broke.
Yeah,
$1 million in
back in the day.
That's like
$1
billion.
Yeah.
So know your history, because if you know your history,
read that. Those are so many interesting.
So a New York Times article. It's the New York Times obituaries Black History Month overlooked. So go to it, but continue always. Just knowing these stories helps you it informs you about the future.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Now we're gonna go out. This was a really great episode. See, Limor Painless. Was it? Yes.
She said, was it?
It was great. We always go out too on what you're doing next, and friends like us, and the friends like us, you'll see from what we do. You can play. It's just fun. It's just like you change up with friends like us. You don't need enemies, but you just change the last part to what you want. Whatever you want. It's just summing up the show basically, and I'll go first so that I'll be the great example. Marina Franklin here. So by the time this airs, I've already done an hour of new material at the Fat Black Pussycat, but don't be sad, you didn't miss it, because I'm going to do another one on the, I'm going to do another one. I think that's the 18th, the week after, not next week, but the week after that on the Tuesday at the Fat Black Pussycat. I'll say it at the top of the show, you'll hear it. So if you missed me this Tuesday, you can see me again at the Fat Black Pussycat. I'm working on new material, so by the time the hour comes out and I go on tour, you'll be like, you won't say, I already heard that. You'll go, wow, she's got new material. Oh, pretty, and it's not easy. So it's going to be a low price so that your suffering isn't great. No, it'll be fun. So coming out to the Fat Black Pussy, you can always go to Fat Black Pussycat. Go to my website, marinafranklin.com, to see where I'm performing. And with friends like us, we are learning to listen to all the generations around us. Cool. Mm-hmm. To make it better and funnier. All right. Pat Brown, you go next.
Your little tags are cheating.
I know.
They're cheating.
Yeah, but they've gotten so much better. Remember how I used to do it? I used to just say friends like us and then go look around.
That's hilarious. Hi, thank you for everybody coming and listening to the podcast today. We had such a great talk. My name is Pat Brown. What I have coming up, please check out my YouTube show. It's called